What up, it's your boy Debbie Downer here to ruin your mood for another year by delivering garbage straight from Japan's anime industry into your waiting eyeballs. Usually I say new year, new anime for my winter previews, but that's a laugh considering the number of season 2s we're getting. Wow, I'm laying it on pretty thick for someone with no taste, and I haven't even gotten into what shows I ended up watching. Speaking of, how did I get the cream of the crop to kick off the halfway point of this miserable decade? By hitting the betting markets under various show names as pseudonyms, and whichever hit the jackpot on the next CEO getting democratically unelected from life were my winners. Remember kids, capitalism doesn't pay, unless you make YouTube videos for a living, so make sure you hit that subscribe button to fuel my hypocritical money addiction with that sweet delicious ad revenue. Better hurry before my loan sharks break my legs. Anyway, got a hell of a roster. Beheneko is the cat distribution system TikTok has told me so much about in full swing. Bogus skill Fruitmaster is the story of a guy who took too many fruits at once and lived to tell the tale. What a legend. Possibly the greatest alchemist of all time has a long way to go before dethroning Full Metal Alchemist, but I'm willing to watch it fail. In case Japan's horrid work culture wasn't explicit enough, Headhunted to Another World has a guy getting a better job offer working for a literal demon. Project Number 9 brings network primetime tier writing to anime with Dr. Detective. I'm Getting Married to a Girl I Hate in My Class skips about 3 steps in the rom-com genre. Solo Leveling returns to flood your socials with pure hype once more. You can run, but you can't hide from the forced marriage rom-com trope, and I want to escape from princess lessons. Map is showing some self-reflection in Zenshu, where an anime director doesn't understand love. Netflix continues their solid run with My Happy Marriage's 2nd season. JC Staff shows us the way to a girl's heart is making her wet in honey lemon soda. Magic Maker breaks the Isekai mold by reincarnating the protag into a world without magic. Gasp. I feel like I've already watched the daily life of a middle-aged online shopper in another world, back when it was called Campfire Cooking. You know what? I'm not tired of villainous anime. If it's about a middle-aged man reincarnating as a teenage girl and from bureaucrat to villainous, dad's been reincarnated. I'm not even mad about all the season 2s this time around if we're getting bangers, and Apothecary Diaries embodies that. I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time sounds like me at my day job. Oh look, Owl the Edge is back with Ubel Blot. The hit manga Sakamoto Days gets an adaptation, cashing in on the retired/assassin living a normal life shtick. Oh shit, Toilet-Bound Hanako-kun actually made it out of development hell after 5 years. The harem anime we deserve makes its triumphant comeback with 100 girlfriends. The Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world, smashes Sentai and Isekai together at last. I don't know who asked for this, but they can probably take it back. Okay, look, so after all of that, there's at least something to look forward to this season, so let's take a look at these first episodes. First up is Beheneko. The elf girl's cat is secretly an S-rank monster. A knight dies while fighting the forces of evil, and rather than reincarnating as a hero like he expects, he finds himself reborn into one of the strongest monsters in the world. But the babies of said monster species bear a striking resemblance to house cats, and so he finds himself as the newly rescued pet of an elf. Okay, so the title and premise do actually give this a leg up, because it could be pretty neat. Its main goal is to deliver 2 things to you: cute cat shenanigans, and barely contained titties bouncing around. Yeah, this'll appeal to a certain subset of viewers. I kind of would have enjoyed a story more about a former knight coming to terms with his new life, and maybe even fighting against his new monster nature. But this ain't that. Instead, it's a fairly bog-standard modern anime fantasy premise with adventuring tropes, skill stealing to make OP builds, and... oh god damn it, they just remade Tensura without the isekai aspect, I just noticed that. The animation here is boring to talk about because it's nothing special. It's mostly fine, though the animators are clearly struggling with consistent proportions throughout the first episode, and that usually doesn't bode well. Like, the action isn't done well, but this series isn't ugly or doing anything egregiously bad that it's entirely invisible. On some level, I was hoping for a surprise that this would somehow be good, but instead I just got a big-tittied elf waifu with an OP house cat doing the usual Fantasy World Grand Tour. There's so many anime like this out these days that I'm finding it hard to even care. I'm clearly not getting away from garbage fantasy just yet, and Bogus skill Fruitmaster is next. There's special fruits that give skills when eaten, but you can only eat one or you'll die. I think Oda's gonna sue somebody on that one. So our boy got the Fruitmaster skill, assuming it would just be useful in farming, only to accidentally eat another skill fruit that should have killed him. But instead of dying, he got the Sword God skill to outdo his Sword Saint childhood friend. So now he's off to go live his adventuring dream, and become the strongest dude in history, I guess. I'm so tired of these OP jack-offs in a fantasy world shows, and this one's about as stupid as they come. But worse yet, this literally felt like a bad trope bingo card. Aside from the bland OP pro tag, we've got a hot waifu childhood friend who's attached to him at the hip for no reason, and they even get a little adopted daughter type character to fill out their family unit. Wow, an OP pro tag and waifu gotcha all in one? Daring, aren't we? I can't tell how serious this show is because the premise is incredibly stupid, which it treats some parts as jokes, but then the outcomes are dead serious, and that's concerning. Also, this bugged me. Dude grows skill fruits because apparently that's just a thing you can do, and the Fruitmaster skill makes him immune to the poison from consuming more than just one, so why isn't he just eating them to stockpile skills from the start? Whatever, I'm overthinking this shit. It doesn't matter. The animation isn't my favorite style, as it's simplistic, cartoony, and reliant on chibi to amp up what constitutes humor in this anime. For action though, it somehow trips over the low bar I buried to still be laughably bad. No wait, what studio did this again? Asahi Productions? Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, the animation isn't impressive, and the track record for this studio is a noticeable dip in quality around the halfway point at best. Bogus skill? More like bogusly bad first episode. That was fucking awful, don't include that. I never thought the day would come where I would hope that Isekai of all things could save me from garbage fantasy, and my prayers are still going unanswered, after seeing possibly the greatest alchemist of all time. Our main dude was wrapped up in a hero summoning spell by accident, seen that before, so he was given his choice of OP abilities as recompense for the mistake by this new world's goddess. Still seen that, and all he's wanting to do is live a relaxing life, because there was zero hope this wouldn't be a trope-addled mess. So what does he choose? The creation skill, not realizing it's the most broken ability in the verse, and thus he begins his new life. My question is, can I skip this? No, seriously, what do you even want me to say? That description is an apt substitute for viewing, because you already know this won't be anything beyond an OP pro tag and waifu collectathon. And hey, the first episode confirms my suspicions. I feel like I've already seen this anime before, probably because it's practically the same setup as In Another World with my smartphone and A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring from last summer. At least there seems to be a plot carrying this though, with the other people who were intentionally summoned, and some evil empire in the background of all this. So perhaps it can string together a story worth watching, despite its heavy reliance on overdone cliches. The animation here isn't great, but it's competent at least, and fits with the tone of the anime. The action has some impact and the comedy bits are light, but overall it's still on the lower end of the spectrum. Now I'm not holding that against this series, as it does still get the job done, and that's not saying much. I didn't accidentally end up with Oops All Fantasy this season, did I? Because I'm still looking at Isekai with Headhunted to Another World. Our guy is a typical Japanese office worker who gets summoned, intentionally for once, to a new world by a demon lord who wants him to be one of his 4 generals, which is pretty great since his previous job sucked. So can his corporate know-how get him a leg up in army management? Let's find out. I'll give it this, the premise is at least unique. The setup here is a bit one note, but I'll be damned if the comedy for this intro isn't on point. It quickly establishes why this dude's life was shit, and why he's been sought out to work in the Demon Lord's army despite him not understanding. But I think what sold me was this isn't a reincarnation or something stupid. Dude is just straight up a Japanese office worker in another world. He doesn't have magic or some OP power. He's just using his current skill set in a fantasy world to make a splash, which shows faith in the core concept. I'm liking that. And the fact the Demon Lord values his skills as a worker adds a fun twist that a literal Demon Lord is better than Japanese corporate work culture. Thing is, the Demon Lord's not wrong. The dude's actually good at his job. As for the animation, don't expect much from this series. It's not flashy and the art is pretty average. But while it might not look super visually engaging, the actual content here does the heavy lifting and carries my attention. Yeah, who would have thought that the abusive workplace isekai would be the winner so far? Thank God I'm out of the isekai and fantasy hellscape, only to stumble into Project Number 9's latest attempt at anime with Ameku MD, Dr. Detective. At a hospital, there's a wing where difficult patients are sent, but enough about my recent visit. Dr. Ameku handles cases of mysterious illnesses, to even murders the police can't solve. This is basically Anime Girl Dr. House without the pain pill addiction.
It's never lupus.
Pop culture references aside, this series is entertaining as well as a unique entry this season, being with an adult cast, mystery, and more importantly to my purposes, not a fantasy anime. Between police work and hospital diagnosis, and the core cast having strong personalities that mesh well, there's a lot to watch this for. But my biggest concern is, will this have an overarching narrative to keep this series engaging throughout? The structure seems more mini-arc based, which works to get audiences hooked, but finishing falls entirely onto how engaging the next mystery is. So really that's to say I'm enjoying the first taste of this show for now, but whether it can keep my interest lands squarely on episode 3's shoulders. In terms of animation and cinematography, this is a solid entry, though the style is fairly average for this studio. I mean, there's moments it looks nice, don't get me wrong, but Project Number 9 gets a bad rap as their quality declines as shows go on. Which means while the first episode is decently done and has some nice art in it, I'm reluctant to give it passing marks until I've seen more. If the idea of House as an anime girl tickles your fancy, this might prove to be a bit more engaging than that premise. At some point, my anime choices are a cry for help, and instead of getting them, I'm uploading them to YouTube for laughs. I'm getting married to a girl I hate in my class is my next mistake, where a guy in high school marries the girl. Why the hell am I saying this? That title was the description. Anyway, the feeling's mutual apparently. But that pesky little fact doesn't stop rom-coms from trying their damnedest, so we're off to the races with an improbable setup. I mean, it's not entirely random. These two are blackmailed into this arrangement by their grandparents. Characters are the lifeblood of most rom-coms, as a wacky premise is only enough to get your foot in the door, and what we're left with is a collection of stereotypes too cliched for even anime. We have our overly diligent class rep type, and the sarcastic genius lead with barely any motivation. The comedy aspect certainly exists, mostly consisting of telegraphed one-liners that fly fast. So while it's not boring, it does come across as every character is fighting for the spotlight by being the sarcastic straight man in the routine, and that's when the two leads aren't arguing non-stop. That's not really endearing since it doesn't hint they're covering up deeper feelings, they just hate each other. I will admit, the voice actors are at least committing to the roles with a ton of energy, so it brings their dynamic to life. The style here is a fairly standard affair for these sort of shows. There's not really a striking art direction, average designs, and the actual cinematography is by the numbers, creating an overall forgettable experience. No, breaking into chibi for a few gags isn't really doing it any favors, as it's acting as a crutch for both the animation and writing. Which is a shame since they're apparently expecting a somewhat novel premise to carry this over the finish line. Yeah, that's about 300 words of me saying I'm not impressed, and expecting this to just be average in the end. Next is a series that doesn't really need an introduction. Solo Leveling's second season kicks off with a bang. In case you somehow missed it, Solo Leveling is an incredibly popular Korean manhwa about our modern world smashed together with some fantasy elements, making a select few who can fight against invading monsters with magic and shit. That is a premise that has been done to death, but add in that our boy is going from trash tier to OP after being abandoned, given the ability to level up and increase his stats when no one else can, and a hefty dose of corporate politics on top of the actual action, and you get a pretty engaging story that utilizes the power fantasy aspect well. How does this season follow up on the success from the first? Pretty well, as it hits the ground running with a sudden fight for life and death. Yeah, my biggest complaint was how close to their chest A1 Pictures is playing the first season, not giving the best first impression to those watching weekly. But this episode didn't pull any punches, by reintroducing the core cast, reminding us of the stakes, and jumping right back into the story seamlessly, showing us this series is getting the treatment it deserves. If you enjoyed the previous season of Solo Leveling, I can't imagine you'd be disappointed with the second, so go check it out. Back into the rom-com grind with I Want to Escape from Princess lessons. A girl engaged to the prince of her kingdom is fed up with all the etiquette lessons and shit, and lucky for her, her future husband suddenly has another woman around his arm, so I guess that means she's off the hook. Unlucky for her though, after her grand escape, the prince shows up at her doorstep asking what she thinks she's doing, because apparently he still wants to marry her. I think the core premise here has legs to carry this series, and the first episode lays the groundwork pretty well. Despite being a noble-born girl, she's still pretty down to earth, until that's basically beaten out of her by high society. I think pretty much everyone can relate to that desire to escape social pressures, so I at least like the lead. And the thing is, the prince comes off like an ass from the description, but when you see their interactions, she's literally dead inside, which tells us him breaking things off might have been deliberate for her sake. So, I don't know, there might be more here than we think. As for the comedy, I got a genuine laugh when the engagement was broken up, as this series plays it straight during the first half, building tension expertly. The animation in the first episode isn't that great though, but the art is actually pretty nice. Damn shame it's all in the backgrounds, making the characters feel like they're not exactly a part of this world. Oh good, and there's the staple off-putting 3D models to save on animation. At least it's mostly on the animals and not people. Those are few and far between though, and while it's not the prettiest looking show, it's not distractingly bad like some other entries this season. There's a definite effort put into how this anime is presented through its cinematography and framing, so it feels much better put together than it really is, while conveying the story visually. I'm liking the first episode since the writing and direction are on point, even if the animation can't quite keep up. Zenshu keeps the rom-com flying, with a girl working her way up the animation world's ladder quickly with her sheer talent, to the point she directs a hit anime, building up hype for her as an unparalleled genius. Too bad the next project dropped on her lap just so happens to be a rom-com. With zero experience in this subject, she hits a massive wall, causing production to come to a standstill. How can she rectify this and keep her corporate overlords happy? Let's find out. Or not. Yeah, joke's on you. Were you expecting a surprise isekai? I wasn't, and I'm a little bit pissed off. Yeah, the genius anime director working her ass off to make a movie, but hitting a creative wall, ends up with food poisoning and is subsequently isekai to an anime world she liked as a kid. I'm sure there's a message in this about realizing why she entered the industry, and you know, why she's making anime in the first place so she can finish her deadline back home, which I guess is fine for a story. Hell, even reinforce that her power is redrawing the storyboard of the world she's trapped in to fix poor decisions. But it's also not lost on me who made this series. Yeah, funny that Mappa is producing an original anime about an overworked animator struggling to meet a deadline. I wonder how many animators fell ill just trying to do these scenes, huh? Jokes and poor taste aside, it does look great, as most of Mappa's work does, with solid action scenes and pretty good cinematography. The art is on the better side of average too, creating a pretty competent work, with a really strong climax that cranked this series up to 11 for a whole scene. Though I am left with a gnawing sense that I don't really know this series. Maybe it's the rug pull premise, or the feeling that this is probably just a hallucination to motivate her on her current project, but the first episode just felt hollow. Though I am still pretty interested in where this is going, as the concept is on the more unique side of things. I know I won't be baited with this next one because it's a follow-up anime. My Happy Marriage's second season is back to gut punch you in the feels with more over-the-top senseless abuse. That way you can ooh-woo over depression incarnate getting the happy ending she deserves. Now trash, I already hear you saying. That's not fair. The first season was pretty good. Yeah, it was, as it mashed a cute, fluffy romance story with supernatural elements, a mystery about our main girl's family, and some great animation to tie that package together. How does the second season follow that up? Because I was pretty satisfied after watching the first. Well, I guess by tackling some of the unanswered questions from the previous season that weren't so explicit. Like, girl just got some supernatural abilities late in life, so how the hell is she gonna control them? Also about that whole marriage thing that never got delivered in the first season. They weren't slipping that detail past me, it's literally in the title. Anyway, there's still room for this story, even if the anime had a fairly decent resolution as far as anime usually goes. Because who knows if they're actually gonna get a season 2 sometimes. That comment's in memory of No Game No Life. Great news is this feels like a continuation with a consistent visual style, which is sure to please fans, as the first season looked pretty good. If you're looking for a romance without a focus on comedy and more a mystery and supernatural element, this really stands out in the genre. I think I've officially lost my right to bitch about fantasy and isekai when I've got so much romance on my plate, but I'm a sucker for this shit. Next, we're looking at Honey Lemon Soda, where a shy girl tries to come out of her shell in high school, only to get her hopes dashed when the popular boy in class accidentally name drops on her and splashes her with some lemon soda. You think that'd be an epic "it's just a prank bro" moment, but no. He's cool and actually supports her so she's not targeted for having to wear gym clothes in class, because he wears his too. She's already been crushing on him a bit, but now that she's been absorbed into his friend group and dude gets her to stand up for herself, she realizes her feelings are more than just friendship. This anime's a more straightforward romance like you'd expect, honing in on the core concept of an unlikely relationship from the outset. Our main girl feels like a sorta generic plain Jane shoujo protag who's been bullied in the past, and the dude's initial impression is the delinquent with a heart of gold trope. That works as a starting point, but his brimming confidence and teasing both feel natural and cute. Also, our girl is pushing herself to be more sociable in a way that's realistic and gives an overall grounded and relatable vibe. Animation here is on point. JC staff has always done pretty solid work. I'm liking their detailed art style with a genre like romance that explores thoughts and feelings in an abstract way visually. Though this is still far from their best work, as while it's detailed, the animation itself is a bit limited. However, the cinematography and art are definitely doing the heavy lifting. The first episode is certainly fine, but definitely not wowing me, so hopefully it can pick up some momentum. Oh, welcome to the mid-video ad roll. Usually I would just wink to the audience in this section, but why lampshade it anymore? It's way more fun to ask you to comment whether you actually got an ad or not. Anyway, back to more anime first impressions. Wow, I'm actually getting away from romance anime for a bit, and it's right back into fucking Isekai with Magic Maker. How to make magic in another world. A guy liked magic so much he yeeted himself into a fantasy world, and he's pretty stoked until he learns that his new life doesn't actually come with magic. But all hope isn't lost, not when he stumbles on its existence anyway. Crazy. As soon as magic's discovered and dude researches it, he becomes the hero they need as terrible shit keeps happening that only magic can solve. So there are aspects of this that work in its favor to make it stand out from the pack. The fact magic doesn't exist is an interesting plot point, but the first episode is told from the protagonist's sister's perspective, noticing all of his odd behavior. It spends some time establishing their family a bit, their relationship, gonna ignore how obsessed she is with her little brother, and also a little about the world itself. Ostensibly, I should care, but while I can tell it's trying, it's having a hard time escaping its major flaw. Nothing fucking happens in this first episode. Yeah, it does take its time to explain shit, but that's all bog standard fantasy world stuff. Well, except for magic's non-existence, I guess. But who these characters are and why they live the way they do? Don't worry about it. Until the very end when they discover that magic exists, by the power of love, and apparently incestuous love at that. What the actual fuck? Yeah, presumably that's when the series will actually kick off, but I'm at a loss for what I'm even supposed to be feeling besides confusion and disgust at this point, so I'm gonna gloss over that for now and talk animation. That's a distraction. It's certainly an anime. Remember when Studio Dean, actually did pretty good work? Yeah, they've been struggling lately to create something that doesn't look like complete dog shit, and I guess this technically succeeded. It's not great, but it's entirely passable, and hey, even on the better end of average at times. But that's barely a footnote when the first episode left off on sibling love is what actually makes magic. Yeah, quick, please, give me something to wash that bad taste out of my mouth. Oh hey, the daily life of a middle-aged online shopper in another world is about a dude in his 40s solving all of his randomly transported to another world problems with the power of Amazon Prime. Yeah, literally another isekai about a guy using an online store cheat ability to live an easy life. Where have I heard that one before? Oh wait, already made that joke. Move on. Talk about speedrunning the isekai setup. This series does it in a montage, sans voiceover with punchy editing, and it's much better for it. I really appreciate how this just shows the dude figuring out his powers and setting his immediate goals of securing money to fuel his shopping so he can maintain his safety and lifestyle. I was just expecting some sort of dumb comedy, so I'm pretty pleased there's stakes, motivation, and even identity in this first episode. Yeah, this seems like a pretty standard fantasy world, but it's much more lived in compared to many others on the market. Our main dude was so overworked he basically got disability retirement and pieced out to the country to go live a relaxing life off the land, before getting isekai'd by some seemingly mischievous gods. That explains his resourcefulness and his reliance on online shopping all at the same time. This easily could have been some low-effort garbage isekai, but I'm liking how earnestly it tackles the premise. The art and animation aren't the best, but whoever storyboarded this first episode deserves a raise. The shot choices all serve a purpose to either tell us about the world, or even the characters. And there's not a wasted moment in getting us settled into this anime. I don't know how many more ways I can really say I'm pleasantly surprised, but if you're looking for a serious take on the merchant life isekai genre, this is probably worth a look, because honestly, it's pretty good. Oh great, more isekai? Please call my tab at this point. Anyway, next is from Bureaucrat to Villainous. A middle-aged man dies and is reborn as the main antagonist in an otome game his daughter played a lot, which is confusing as hell. I mean, he knows his role, but as an old bureaucrat, his customer service voice is too strong that he ends up befriending the protag and becoming a model student. So how's a father past 50 gonna fit in with a bunch of teenagers? Let's find out. Yeah, pretty sure we all know the villainous setup by now, but adding a small twist of a middle-aged man being reincarnated juxtaposes his point of view as someone barely familiar with the game, and outside its target demographic, to create a lot of comedic moments that land well. I mean, dude's an otaku, but an old school one, so he knows the rough beats, but not the actual details of the game. In terms of villainous isekai satire, it's doing incredibly well as both a comedy and an isekai, but also doing it in a way that's fairly wholesome, as the villainous is just everyone's loving father in this anime, which is honestly kinda sweet on top of being funny. The animation here might lack style and what would classically be considered good qualities, but hey, it's dakedo, which means it's pretty expressive and leans hard into the genre's aesthetics to create a series that's both fun and vibrant, while also showcasing a solid understanding of the subject matter to reinforce its comedy. The animators understood the assignment, especially when it goes over the top for something mundane to punch up its humor. If you're looking for a comedic isekai this season, this was certainly worth a watch, because it got plenty of laughs out of me. It's taken me entirely too long to talk about the Apothecary Diaries, just in time for season 2 to hit. Who'd have thought? The anime has a ton of fans, and for good reason, because it fits into a similar vein to Ascendance of a Bookworm, though not an isekai or even a fantasy. This is a fictional historical drama taking place in a China equivalent, which makes you wonder how the hell a series like this even has a fan base in the modern industry, where everything is either romance, shonen, or classical European fantasy. But it has a fun formula of mystery of the week connecting to bigger plot threads and a ton of political intrigue, all while our titular apothecary maniac uses her brain and quick wits to solve whatever problems her, in massive air quotes, eunuch handler has her do. Apothecary Diaries is what a lot of mystery anime wishes they were, because it manages to weave minor details and plots together to form a bigger picture, while populating its world and political structure with characters who have their own motives, creating a complex web our core cast has to navigate to keep the story engaging. And how does this second season handle all that? By picking up the plot threads still dangling from last season. So then the question becomes, how does this one look? Considering it has the same studio and staff, and it's only been a year since the previous season wrapped up, the quality is maintained, which considering 2 double-core runs is pretty damn impressive. This is literally just more of what you liked in the first season, so if you enjoyed that, you'll like this. Well, my momentary escape from fantasy is as fleeting as always. Next I'm looking at I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time. That's a literal title, and a mouthful. The protag is the guild girl for once, as she's sick of all the overtime because adventurers can't finish their damn jobs on time, so she decides to take them on in secret by kicking some monster ass. Putting aside the entirely bog standard fantasy world bullshit, because that's a given at this point, what makes this one stand out is the fact that our main character is a little ball of barely contained snark behind that cute anime girl facade. The guild girl is a pretty standard background trope in most modern fantasy anime, who turn into just one of the many waifus fawning over the protag, so seeing one who's so absolutely done dealing with adventurer bullshit is a decent source of comedy. Between her commentary and the sheer absurdity of her secretly being a badass adventurer, at least gives this some variety to its humor. That said, while it's entertaining, it's not exactly a highbrow show, which amounts to mostly junk food with some funny moments, cute stuff, obligatory fan service, and just enough plot to carry it forward, with whether our girl gets outed as the secret badass of the guild or not. The first episode is entertaining enough, I guess. Clover works, weird to see you attached to a series like this, but not unwelcome. The animation and art are expected of this studio, so on the better end of the spectrum. Though I'm not a big fan of this dragon fight scene, I know this studio can do better, so it's a blemish on an otherwise competent first episode. Comedy fantasy anime are pretty damn common these days, but this one punches above its weight class in a few areas that it's worth checking out. Careful, I almost hurt myself on all that edge. Oh wait, it's just Ubel Blot. Some kid shows up with an infamous black sword rumored to be wrecking shit across the land. Obviously people take issue with him, so after killing pretty much everybody sent his way, maybe then we can find out why we're meant to care about all that. Yeah, the description for this anime is just awful. So how about I get into what this actually is? A fairly edgy action series that has some neat concepts, taking place in some post-apocalypse dark fantasy. That's the genre. Anyway, civilization is clearly on a downturn and everyone's pretty miserable. That's where our boy comes in with his little revenge story against the fake-ass heroes who made everything suck. The caster is over-designed as the setting, feeling like someone's sketchbook got published as a manga accidentally. My issue is, after this first episode, I don't really know shit about the characters or world, so I'm struggling to get invested. Oh cool, revenge and dead families. Why should I care? My issue is I feel like there is an answer to that, but they just forgot to include it? So this is going to be a turnoff for those who aren't fans already. Putting a lore explainer after the credits is just lazy. Wait, who's the studio behind this one? Satellite and Staple Entertainment? That doesn't bode well. Yeah, in case you're unfamiliar, those are the studios behind Tasuketsu, Fate of the Majority, and Am I Actually the Strongest respectively. So, no wonder the animation looks like shit. which is a damn shame because apparently they funneled their entire budget into the backdrops. Yeah, if you squint and pause, these action scenes look fine, but pay attention and, I don't know, watch them move, and you'll realize they're held together by tape and a prayer. Yeah, basically a series without an identity, got animated by those with a penchant for ruining them. Great mix. Alright, we're looking at the anticipated? Yeah, sure. Anticipated adaptation of Sakamoto Days. The top assassin in the world got pussy whipped so hard he quit his day job, went into early retirement, and decided to open a corner store. Too bad no one else got the memo, because his past keeps coming back to haunt him. Now he's trying to think of inventive ways to subdue his former rivals without killing them, because he obviously doesn't do that anymore. Off the bat, what we get is a series that's a mixture of slice of life with a dose of action, and while it seems like we've been getting a lot of these assassins living a normal life things lately, this anime manages to stand out without all the cute fluff, and taking its premise a bit more at face value. Oh hey, it actually has faith in its premise. That's rare. And it manages to handle both aspects, the comedy and action, well. The punchline of a fat dude secretly being a badass runs the risk of getting stale, but it works to set the initial episode in motion. And hey, a bit of a hook with his former gang looking to kill him for leaving keeps that going. Though the parallel to Spy Family is made a bit more apparent by introducing a kid who can read minds. That way someone can comment on his murderous daydreams. I don't know why they decided to do that, but fine. Yeah, it's hard to talk about this without mentioning the controversy about the animation. That was a pretty hotly contested issue when the trailers were coming out, but considering this is the same studio that did Undead Unluck and Dr. Stone, I'm not too worried about it being bad. Does it look great though? Not really. The action scenes do use 3D that doesn't mesh too well to cover its angles, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't flow well, or do some pretty cool shit with choreography. Yeah, it might not be the prettiest, but it's competently put together. Will that disappoint fans? Probably, but I'm liking it so far. Surprise, surprise! Toilet-bound Hanako-kun made it out of production hell after 5 years. So apparently Lurch is moving forward despite doing a spin-off before releasing this. What even happened last season? Well, Hanako-kun's backstory was hinted at, the other mysteries were explored somewhat, and we still got a few more to get through. And by a few, I mean most. So there's definitely room for this story to go. And venturing back into my channel's history, back when I was still doing almost exclusively seasonal content, I enjoyed this anime a ton. So, shocker, my recommendation still stands. How does this season do as a continuation though? Once it's past its reintroduction, it feels like the show never even ended honestly, by getting us back into the next big school mystery. This show's honestly great to revisit, because I didn't even realize just how much I missed it. Between great art, animation, complex story, mystery, and supernatural elements, all with a distinct shonen action flair, it's a pretty unique experience overall. Weird they brought back the singer for the new OP, and it's nowhere near as much of a banger as the original. I mean, it's fine, but let's face it, it was up against a 10 out of 10, and it's kinda like they're calling attention to it with this weird bit of continuity. Lurch is handling the production here, though much of the key staff are new, like director and art director, but hey, at least the animation director and series composer are the same. So that really means this'll come down to how well the director can convey the story, and new blood isn't always a bad thing. There is a definite effort to at least match the feel of the original, which is appreciated in an age where you're just as likely to get a new studio to pick up a franchise and make it infinitely worse. So good to see the quality is maintained along with the story. Well, we were certainly backloaded with Season 2's, and the 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You returns in its quest to redeem the harem anime genre in the best way. What's left to cover? Well, if you're keeping track, about 94 girls, I guess. No, that 100 wasn't a joke, it's actually doing it, so strap in. And this season continues the absurd rom-com bullshit cranked up to 11 for comedic purposes, by following Rentaro's love life. I don't know who let the writer cook, but this hit the ground running with some really fast-flying jokes that barely gave me a chance to breathe. Yeah, the comedy in this rom-com has always been on point, but damn if this didn't deliver. As for the plot, well, it's 100 Girlfriends. There is a plot, but not much of one. Basically just a continuation of the absurd gimmick and episodic structure. I mean, you're not going to be able to just dive into this season though, because as the number of girlfriends increases, so too does the number of characters. As for the animation, another case where the studio and staff are returning. The quality from the first is carrying over, so we're 5 out of 5 on that front. The series is just the best sort of dumb fun, and worth checking out if you like really dumb rom-coms that are a send-up of a genre. What better way is there to end this video than on an isekai and something that isn't a season 2? So the Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world, tries to smash together two classic genres at this point. Please kill me. Isekai has actually been a dominant force in anime for over 10 years. What has the world come to? So, anyway, a Red Ranger gets sent to another world after possibly dying in the climactic battle against his big bad? Hard to say. So he's decided to stick around and save people once again as an adventurer. Big shocker. The setup here feels like a low-effort parody Sentai, but one done lovingly. You can definitely tell this one was made by fans of Sentai. As for the isekai aspects though, it's entirely reliant on tropes. But my big question is this still a Red Ranger in a fantasy world? Or does he become your typical isekai protag after going there? And great news, he's still using his Sentai powers, which is what I was hoping for, giving this a bit of a creative edge by smashing two genres together in a way that feels unique, to the point that Sentai's odd quirks become a fourth wall joke in of themselves. Animation for this wasn't the best. Oh, say light, you again? Yeah, you were busy this season. You shouldn't have. Though this is probably their best looking work of this winter, that's not saying much, so don't mistake that as praise. The art is muddy, the designs aren't great, and sadly that cheap ass CG in the beginning was probably the most ambitious part of the episode. But it's not offensively bad like some of their other stuff this season. I don't know. This has some nice ideas we've not seen in isekai yet, so I'm willing to see where it goes. So with that, we've covered the first episodes of Winter 2025. It's a season 2 packed year so far, and a ton of fantasy and rom-com on the horizon. But I would say we're at least off to a good start. Though tell me your thoughts down below. I obviously couldn't watch everything this season, some I was even actively avoiding like Unnamed Memory, but what are you looking forward to this winter? I'd love to hear it. For now though, hey, you've made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and do all the other YouTube stuff to help the channel grow. You can also join my Discord with a link down in the description. And if you really want to support me, you can head on over to my Patreon. Or hey, check out my channel memberships and pick up some extra perks. Speaking of Patreon, I'd like to give a special thanks to JMonth33A, Pokeflute, Robin DBL, Samuel Chen, Sazi, Tristan, and Vonstrom for their continued support. Thanks for watching.